strong.
Chapter 311, Lin-Qiu. Qingzhou Academy. The academy students are full of enthusiasm. Today's Qingzhou Academy is very crowded. Today is Qingzhou Academy's spring day. Academy students gathered for the exam, and the main characters of the palaces of Budo Palace and Shufa Palace came in person. At this time, Qingzhou Academy was very crowded, and the host of Qingzhou City, Qin Shuai, also arrived in person, and there were many big men in Qingzhou City. Qin Shuai's daughter, Qin Yi, sat next to him, and Maimo showed her talent to the young girls at Yavu Stadium. Today, Qin Yi is already 25 years old. She gets really sexy and gets hotter. She is still teaching at Qingzhou Academy, which is the goddess in the minds of many disciples. Of course, now that the goddess has a boyfriend, is the most talented person in Qingzhou Academy in the past 2 years, Lin-Qiu. She is also a main disciple of the ancient palace of Qingzhou Academy. Today, Lin-Qiu sat next to Qin Yi, the two sat next to Qin Shuai, and the two looked good together. There are more genius characters born in the past 2 years. Qin Shuai smiled and looked at the battle platform. Well, after Qingzhou Zugong had its ups and downs at that time, although his vitality was greatly injured, the younger generation of Qingzhou City trained even harder after that. Leng Qingfeng, the lord of the Jianghe Pavilion, accompanied him and smiled. What's more, Lin-Qiu's talent has also inspired many people. Lin-Qiu, in his early 20s, had stepped into the realm of the French phase and placed him in Qingzhou City. It's really amazing and talented. After all, they are people who come out and go. The palace owner from Jingxing Palace smiled. We at Qingzhou Academy haven't seen such extraordinary people. Qin Shuai's eyes lit up. Didn't he appear? He shook his head with a smile. He didn't say much, but two figures appeared subconsciously in his mind. If they don't leave the academy, it will already be a legend. Naturally, their world is destined not to be in Qingzhou City. When are General Qin, Lin-Qiu and Qin Yi planning to get engaged? Asked the host of the Golden Palace with a smile. I don't care, you ask their opinion. Qin Shuai smiled. Lin-Qiu looked at Qin Yi. Don't be in such a hurry, I have to serve my father for a few more years. I never thought of getting married so early. Qin Yi said with a smile, and people nodded without saying a word. The spring festival exams are still going on, and it's very lively. At this time, there was a monster flying over Qingzhou Zugong, descending from a height, and then heading towards one of the Zugong. Many people paid attention to the scene and stared at the monsters one by one. It seems that there is someone on the back of the monster. Someone said. Several palace masters in Qingzhou Academy narrowed their eyes and stared at the black wind swooping down, not knowing who was there. The void monster was naturally a black wind statue, and landed in the courtyard with Ye Fuxian and Hua Jiu. This courtyard is rather deserted and uninhabited. It used to be a place where romantic flowers and the language of flower interpretation lived. Here, Ye Fuxian also has a warm memory. The two figures fell to the ground, and there was some emotion in the heart of the deserted courtyard. Hua Jiu took a step forward, and the stairs and the room were covered in dust. He wanted to go in and see. After all, he stopped. Turning around, Hua Jiu smiled. Let's go. He just wanted to see it. Yes. Ye Fuxian nodded. Today Qingzhou Zugong seemed alive. Seems to be holding a spring festival. It should have been noticed by many by now. The two of them set foot in the black wind carving, and they were about to leave, but they caught a glimpse of the current figure. When they saw Ye Fuxian and Hua Jiu, they were obviously stunned. Ye Fuxian. Leng Qingfeng, the head of the Jianghe Pavilion, fixed his gaze. Ye Fuxian returned to travel more than 2 years ago, together with Zhao Xiang, and now he is back again. However, when he heard the news from Donghai City, Ye Fuxian was wanted and hunted by the Nandu country, and now he doesn't know what happened. Hua Jiu has also returned. This legendary girl who used to be in Qingzhou Academy was truly a disaster for the country and people. Seniors don't come without worry. Ye Fuxian smiled. Ye Fuxian, today is the Qingzhou Zugong Spring Festival. In the past, sit down and show little brother. Leng Qingfeng invited, and he didn't know much about Nandu country, but the former disciple of Qingzhou Zugong did have talent. Very extraordinary. Not. Ye Fuxian shook his head. Although Qingzhou Zugong had some memories, he didn't have many feelings. General Qin is also here. Leng Qingfeng knew that Ye Fuxian had a very good relationship with Qin Shuai and Qin Yi. Ye Fuxian looked at Hua Jiu, who was holding her hand and laughed. Let's meet General Chia. All right, Ye Fuxian nodded. Go. Leng Qingfeng smiled and nodded, then the group walked down and came to Yavu Stadium. In the current vast field of performance, when Ye Fusion and Hua Jiu were seen, countless eyes froze. Although many teenagers didn't know them, many teachers and young people in Kingsu Academy knew them. King Yimi's eyes narrowed, and then his body rushed in front of Ye Fusion and Hua Jiu. He looked at the two with a bright smile, and then said to Ye Fusion, "That stinky brat is back, haven't you come to see sister first?" "Am I here?" Ye Fusion shrugged and smiled. King Yi looked at Hua Jiu again, and said with a smile, "It seems to hold the beauty, no wonder I don't remember seeing my sister. Am I someone who takes color and friends lightly?" Ye Fusion whispered. "Huh." King Yi smiled at him. "Go, take a look at General Qin." Ye Fusion took Hua Jiu's hand and walked towards the subject. Qin Shuai stood up to greet him. After the news came from Donghai City, he was always worried about Ye Fusion. Now seeing that both of them were doing well and they were so amazing, his heart was relieved. If it wasn't Ye Fusion, his and Qin Yi's fate would be very sad. "General Qin," Ye Fusion shouted with a smile. Qin Shuai patted his shoulder and smiled. "Fusion, sit by my side." "Okay." Ye Fusion nodded, sitting next to Qin Shuai. Hua Jiu was next to Ye Fusion. Qin Yi was sitting on the other side of Qin Shuai. Lin Qiu's eyes flashed. He had heard of Ye Fusion, but I don't know much. After all, there is limited information that can be found on the island city of Kingsu City. At most, there would be some news from Donghai City. When he saw Hua Jiu coming, he was immediately amazed. There is a beautiful woman in the world, and she has been training in the Kingsu Academy, if she has also trained at the Kingsu Academy in a few years. Donghai City has heard some bad news for you, is that okay? Qin Shuai asked slightly in a serious voice. Everything is in order. Ye Fusion smiled. It doesn't matter. Qin Shuai nodded. I will have time to go back and see her later. This girl Qin Yi will miss you often. How can I? Qin Yime looked at Qin Shuai, betraying his daughter like this. I also often miss my brother. I miss the days when my sister taught spiritual practice in the lecture hall. Ye Fusion laughed. How many lessons did you take? Qin Yime looked at Ye Fusion with disdain, and continued to pretend. Ye Fusion smiled awkwardly. Never. Hua Jiu smiled sweetly. This person was thick-skinned. At this point, Lin Qiu looked back at Ye Fusion and smiled. My name is Lin Qiu, Qin Yi's girlfriend. I often heard Qin Yi mention you, and today I finally saw a real person, and it was amazing. Ye Fusion blinked and smiled. My name is Ye Fusion. I really envy you. Big brother is my goddess, and now you are being chased by you. Well, this is really lucky. Lin Qiu smiled, glanced at Hua Fusion next to Ye Fusion, secretly said that Ye Fusion was a hypocrite, but the woman had such a face, but she said she was jealous of her. Hee. Previously, he thought he was very lucky. Qin Yi is the goddess in the minds of many disciples in Kingsu Zugong. She is hot and sexy, but after seeing Hua Jiu, she doesn't seem to be so lucky. You continue. A palace figure looked at the Zugong disciples, and the young girls Kingsu Zugong looked back at Ye Fusion and Hua Jiu, and continued the Spring Festival exam. Seeing the young man's strong test, Ye Fusion thought of Qiu Yan who once participated in him. Qin Shuai smiled and said, How do you feel? Well, it's not bad. Ye Fusion nodded, but still encouraged the disciples in Zugong to go out and see the outside world. Only by going out can I find out how small Kingsu City is. After the master spent the romantic situation in the sky realm, the overthrown soul was still the first strong in Kingsu City. Even the master of the main palace was just the pinnacle of law. The isolated island city was too far from the outside world. Ye Fusion and Qin Shuai spoke casually. Of course, most of the time he chatted with Qin Yi. Gradually, the spring exams were almost over. There was a list of disciples announced to enter the door, as well as Chumshi rankings. They were all very excited and fainted. Looking at them, Ye Fusion was like seeing when he was young. Fusion, do you want to be instructed in the end? Leng Qingfeng smiled when he saw Chunyu. Not. Ye Fusion shook his head slightly. He was not intentional. Lin Qiu, you can say a few words. Leng Qingfeng said again. Lin Qiu nodded, then walked forward to do the martial arts field, and said, the talent to see all the young teachers and students in the Spring Festival examination is very satisfying. Endlessness is even more so. The disciples at Kingsu Zugong are not arrogant, but they must also broaden their horizons. I am a disciple in Kingsu Zugong has come out of very good people, like Ye Fusion, and he happened to be here today. Fans. His voice fell, and many eyes fell on Ye Fusion. Ye Fusion froze and glanced at Qin Yi. What is this guy doing? Qin Yi frowned, but saw that many disciples in Kingsu Zugong were staring at Ye Fusion. Brother Ye, how about leaving the master and brother of Kingsu Academy open? Lin Qiu smiled and looked at Ye Fuxian. Chapter 312, Conflict. The reason why Lin Qiu was like that was because of some unease in his heart. Ever since Ye Fuxian's appearance, Qin Shuai, Qin Yi, and Leng Qingfeng had all seen his demeanor. Qin Shuai can't wait for Ye Fuxian to become his future son-in-law. Even his girlfriend Qin Yi and Ye Fuxian are too enthusiastic when he is with him. Qin Yi is not very active, so far he hasn't even touched her. Also, he even wondered, would there be any connection between the two? Even Leng Qingfeng, the owner of the Jianghe Pavilion, looked at Ye Fuxian differently. Is her boyfriend Lin Qiu Qin Yi a Ye Fuxian? Is he the most talented person in Qingzu Zugong or Ye Fuxian? Of course, there is another very important reason. Ye Fuxian's boyfriend is amazing. He has never seen such a beautiful woman. As the Prince of Heaven in Qingzu Academy, he was out and about in his youth. After returning, he worshipped under the ancient wooden door the strongest character in Qingzu city. He is also the genius of the rule of law. The fate of the mage, Lin Qiu, will naturally be a little proud and swell. Everything after Ye Fuxian appeared, he was very angry. Therefore, it is natural to prove something. The disciples of Qingzu Zugong immediately began to persuade when they heard Ye Fuxian's words. Even some young girl characters are not much smaller than Ye Fuxian. I heard his name and wanted to see how outstanding Ye Fuxian was now. Comparable to their talented brother, Lin Qiu. Lin Qiu, what are you playing? Qin Yi was a little displeased. He naturally saw that Lin Qiu was meant to compete with Ye Fuxian, perhaps because their attitude made Lin Qiu somewhat unhappy. However, and what is Ye Fuxian's relationship? Not to mention that he and Ye Fuxian knew each other in the academy. At that time, his father was abolished. Many people in the Qingzu Academy looked at him, but the enemy of the Murong family was very proud of it. Ask him for justice. Ye Fuxian shot at Qingzu Zugong with one shot, slaughtered Murong Qiu, and fled. After returning, the Murong family was destroyed and his father became the owner of the city. How did he and Ye Fuxian get along, and how did his father treat Ye Fuxian, but also consider Lin Qiu's feelings? It was too sorry Ye Fuxian. He also mentioned with Lin Qiu what Ye Fuxian had done to him and his father. If Lin Qiu really treated him, he would naturally understand him and should not compete with Ye Fuxian. Lin Qiu frowned, and usually his quiet and gentle girlfriend Qin Yi actually blamed him for making fun of Ye Fuxian in public, which naturally made him even more unhappy, and wanted to protect Ye Fuxian. Co Yi, I just want to let the Ye brothers show their talent in front of their younger siblings, and motivate the younger generation. How's this nonsense? Lin Qiu said with a smile. How to show it? Qin Yi's tone was unpleasant, but Ye Fuxian said he didn't want to leave. Lin Qiu did it without Ye Fuxian's approval. Of course, he seemed a little impolite. Or, talk to me at will. Lin Qiu said lightly, looked directly at Ye Fuxian, and said, what is brother Ye thinking? Ye Fuxian couldn't help but cry and glanced at sister Qin Yi, and said, I am very talented. Of course, I am not an opponent. I give up. Could he be asked to go up and beat sister Qin Yi's girlfriend Lin Qiu? You have to give your sister face. Besides, it is very boring to fight against people in Qingzu city. How can brother Ye be arrogant, and we will be good until we order it? Ye Fuxian was not interested, but Lin Qiu refused to give up, only thinking about avoiding war with words. Lin Qiu, you are too much. Qin Yi stood up, indifferent tone, Ye Fuxian is already so, he is aggressive, really think Ye Fuxian is worse than him. Lin Qiu raised an eyebrow and looked at Qin Yi, his eyes became slightly cold. Who is he? The first young genius in Qingzu city, the master of the great palace bequeathed his disciples, and he knew that a few days ago, his master had set foot in the sky realm. Compared, even if he went to Donghai city, he was still a strong person, he had trained in Donghai city. Qin Yi, scolding him in public for a man. It's nothing to you. Lin Qiu responded lightly. Qin Yimi's eyes froze and froze there. The atmosphere immediately became a little strange. In the eyes of the people of Qingzu Zugong, Lin Qiu and Qin Yi, who are very compatible, have contradictions on the stage of the Spring Festival. While this is normal for people in love, it seems rather serious on this occasion. Qin Shuai looked at Lin Qiu, who was the former Iron General of the Black Unicorn Army. When he saw Lin Qiu's attitude, he said, Qin Yi, you and him, forget it. Qin Yi nodded slightly. It seems that they still don't understand each other, and they have no feelings. He accepted Lin Qiu's pursuit only because he was over 20 years old. In a small town like Qingzu city, most women will marry at this age, and Lin Qiu is really extraordinary in Qingzu city, and the teacher is great. Gonju Gumu, everyone thinks they are compatible, so he also wants to try to get along, but in reality, there is no feeling. Perhaps Lin Q was after him because of his identity and appearance. All fit. Lin Q, since then, we have nothing to do with it. Qin Yi said to Lin Q. The scene was silent. Qin Yi, to break up with Lin Q, was announced in front of everyone. Ever since Lin Q provoked Ye Fusion, Qin Yi couldn't feel ashamed unless he cut ties with him. In this way, Lin Q has nothing to do with him, and Ye Fusion doesn't have to be embarrassed about how to respond. Ye Fusion smiled bitterly, but he did not expect that the appearance of his brother and sister would break because of his appearance, but because of this incident, it can be seen that Lin Q and sister are hardly together. In this case, it can be seen clearly. Hua Jiu gently held Ye Fusion's hand. Mei Yan glanced at Ye Fusion. Fortunately, they really love each other. Are you sure? Lin Qiu's handsome face was a little gloomy at this time. Okay, Qin Yi said. Hee hee. Lin Qiu sneered, then glanced at Ye Fusion, and said, Is there a story for you, your brother and sister? You are presumptuous. Qin Shui sneered coldly, and Lin Qiu pointed out something that was bad for the Qin Yiming festival. Qin Yi did not expect Lin Qiu to say such shameless words. His face became so unsightly. Maimo looked at Ye Fusion and Hua Jiu with a hint of apology and a hint of complaint. Ye Fusion's eyes narrowed as well, and when a conflict arose and broke out, Lin Qiu could provoke him. But Lin Qiu turned out to be bad for Qin Yishi's reputation in public. Lin Qiu, say a few words, said Lang Qingfeng. I can't continue. Lin Qiu ignored him and looked at Qin Shui with a smile. What makes Qin excited? I think General Qin and Ye Fusion are also very close. Have you ever wanted to be a son-in-law? Joke, only the owner of the waste city, even if the Black Unicorn army is rebuilt. His teacher now is truly heaven and status. Take notes, Qin Shui said coldly. Yes. After Qin Shui, several figures in black armor walked forward, but at this time, a voice came, what does General Qin mean? As the words fell, we saw a figure stepping forward, who was the ancient palace head of the Qingzu Learning Academy. Great Palace Master, Lin Qiu is well spoken, and I am under his tutelage, said Lin Shui. My disciples have been disciplined ever since, so I didn't bother General Qin to do so, Jiu Mu said lightly. Qin Shui frowned, and said, how is the Palace Master planning to discipline? Naturally teach him to speak carefully later. Jiu Mu looked at Lin Qiu and said, speak regardless of the occasion, it's not funny. The student knows wrong. Lin Qiu bowed to Jiu Mu, and naturally heard that the teacher was protecting him. Just that. Qin Shui didn't look good. What does General Qin want? Jiu Mu said lightly. Qin Yi raised the severance pay in public, doesn't he consider Lin Qiu's feelings? The encouragement of speech is inevitable. Jiu Mu had been training in retreat for the past few years. He didn't ask much about foreign affairs. He was also greatly stimulated by the events of that year, and finally set foot in the sky a few days ago. Stepping into the sky, the mentality is different. He asks Qin Yi not to be thin, and he is happy to see Lin Qiu and Qin Yi together, but Qin Yi thinks that he is the main lord of the palace because Ye Fusion is so invisible to his disciples. At that time, what status did Hua Fengliu have in Qingzu city? His disciples were quite arrogant in Qingzu Academy. Currently, Hua Fengliu has been wiped out. Now that he has set foot in the sky, and his disciple and daughter are back, also want to discourage his students. Many people have a strange appearance. Today, the owner of the great palace actually clashed with General Qin. Gumu turned his eyes and ignored Qin Shui's face, and fell on Ye Fusion and Wajiu, and then asked Wajiu, how's your father now? Hua Jiu looked at Gumu without an answer. My teacher is naturally very good. Ye Fusion then smiled. I haven't seen him for a long time. If he has the opportunity to return to Qingzu city, I would like to talk to him. Jiu Mudav. Is the main palace retreating? Asked a palace chief of Qingzu Zugong. Well, it has entered the sky. Jiu Mu nodded, and there was a long silence. Qin Shui looked very strong, and understood why Jiu Mu's attitude had become so strong. It turned out that he had stepped into the realm of heaven. I'm afraid there won't be a chance. Ye Fusion looked at Jiu Mu with a smile and stepped into the sky, very confident. Is that so? Jiu Mu said nonchalantly, since it's hard to find an opportunity, you happen to be with Lin Qiu today, so why don't you have a discussion? Lin Qiu's eyes fell on Ye Fusion, and everything seemed to return to its original point. He can't. Ye Fusion didn't look at Lin Qiu, facing the ancient wooden road. Are you going to give it a try? Chapter 313, Nantu Country. With a word, Ye Fusion let the countless eyes of the vast space all focus on his body, and they all froze. He said, "Let Omiya, the main tree, try." The owner of the great palace has said that not long ago broke through to the sky, really that realm. This is a legend in Kingzhou city. How old is Ye Fu? It is said that he started training at the age of 15, and so far he has only practiced for 3 or 4 years. This is really crazy. There are also many people in Kingzhou Zugong who don't like Ye Fusion. When he heard her words, he looked indifferent. Ye Fusion is also very depressed. Is Kingzhou Zugong not a match for him? At that time, he participated in Kiyi for the first time, first in the literary test, and hoped to win the rest of his life. However, due to the relationship between the owner of the Tixingong Palace and the family leader of the Murong family, he gave the first Kiyi to Murongqiu, which caused a lot of disturbance later. He also left Kingzhou Academy. Now back, Jiu Mu set foot in the sky, his mentality is expanding, and he wants to learn from his teacher. Let the students discuss with themselves, what do you need to say more? Idiot. Lin Qiu spoke to Yan Butian below, and said to Ye Fusion, if you don't want to see the opportunity, what thing do you dare to talk to my teacher like this? This is Kingzhou Academy, and the teacher is the lord of the palace. Although Ye Fusion had gotten rid of the wanted criminal, he was so arrogant in front of the palace master in the heavenly country in Kingzhou Academy, it was not an idiot. Ye Fusion glanced at the forest hills and faced the old wooden path again. Since you won't discipline your disciples, I will discipline you. After all, he stepped forward, stepped in the air, and walked towards Lin Qiu. French nature. Many people in Kingzhou Zugong froze their eyes, walked in the void, and did not rely on wind-type spells. This is something that practitioners in the field of law can do. Obviously, Ye Fusion is also a far phase. A young man who is strong in law, and also a destiny mage, this. Lin Qiu's brows also frowned, and Ye Fusion turned out to be of French appearance, which made his face not look good. Talent to practice compared. The breath of the legal phase realm bloomed. Since Ye Fusion has also entered the legal phase, only defeating him is to prove himself. The clattering sound, the magnificent vines rolled towards the forest hill, and Lin Qiu's figure flickered to dodge, but the vines covered the sky and couldn't escape at all. Fire burns in the forest hills. Flamingo, who wants to burn the vine? However, the vine shrouded in flames, shining with a fiery red light, was tied directly to Lin Qiu's body, and bound him straight into the air. This. The disciples in Kingzhou Zugong saw the silent scene. Is this still their most talented brother Lin Qiu? In front of Ye Fusion, he is vulnerable. You get jealous over a trivial matter, and then you talk and insult the woman you're after. You should still be an ordinary person. Ye Fusion spoke to his heart's content, making many people tremble. Ye Fusion is this to clear the cultivation of forest hills. Are you brave? Lin Qiu's face suddenly changed, looking at Ye Fusion. A sharp blade was created on the vine, and pierced into Lin Qiu's body. Taking Lin Qiu as a person, it was very likely that he would retaliate against the sister, so he would. This is not the first time he has become a criminal in Kingzhou Zugong. Master, save me. Lin Qiu made a pitiful cry and looked at his teacher Jiu Mu in horror. Jiu Mu's face was extremely gloomy, and the powerful breath of the heaven realm erupted. He said coldly, let him go. I said, you don't care, I will discipline you. Ye Fusion glanced at the ancient trees. You really are careless. Jiu Mutian's world mood erupted, his face was so ugly, and he didn't expect Ye Fusion to be so strong. But he still couldn't tolerate Ye Fusion's prestige in Kingzhou Zugong. The sword screamed, the force shook the sky, enveloped the Yawu field, and Jiu Mu stepped forward with a terrifying sword intent and headed straight for Ye Fusion. The palace lord sympathizers. Leng Qingfeng did not expect that things would turn into such a situation. I know that I will not invite Ye Fusion to watch the spring festival. Endless sword power with thunder momentum left Ye Fusion. How can Gumu stop? However, I saw Ye Fusion staring at Gumu coldly. It seems that the fall of Kingzhou Academy was not without reason. Lin Qiu acted as Gumu's disciple, and Gumu master did not punish him. Instead, he preached in the heaven world. How to teach a good young generation. In this case, Kingzhou Zugong's problem can only be solved fundamentally. You are looking for death. Lin Qiu's face was thin, looking at Ye Fusion. The sharp blade of the vine stabbed into him, and the scream came again. Ye Fusion looked at him indifferently, idiot. Ye Fusion. The ancient wood came down, carrying the sword in shock. The prince's will Ye Fusion covered his body, the white clothes fluttered, watching the sword light that beheaded him. He raised his palm and grabbed it into the void. There was a terrible thunder dragon appeared, the dragon screamed, the world changed color, pierced through the terrifying sword gas directly, and grabbed towards the ancient wood. Jian Yi's crazy failure, Gumu felt a terrible coercion, like a prince, his heart trembled violently. How could this be? Many eyes were fixed on it, staring at the scene in the void. The thunder dragon broke through, destroying everything. A huge thunder dragon skull appeared in front of Jiu Mu, opened its fangs, and swallowed away at him. Endless lightning flashed from Gumu's body. He shouted furiously, and the sky sword broke, but the thunder dragon was like a bamboo shoot, instantly devoured his sword, and then the terrifying skull bit his body directly. As a result, an extremely shocking scene appeared within this void. Ye Fusion stretched out his hand, released a terrifying thunder dragon, and bit down on the ancient wood. At this moment, Leng Qingfeng's body stood trembling, as if returning to the autumn test that Ye Fusion took, and the capture of the dragon. Time seems to have stopped. Qingzu Zugong Yabuchang was silent, and the disciples looked at the scene one by one in amazement. The main tree of the main palace, the ancient tree that stepped into the heaven realm, turned out to be equally vulnerable in front of Ye Fusion. This has subverted their perception of the practice. Can human talent really be so powerful? No, no. Ling Qiu looked at the scene in despair. His face was pale, and his master in the world couldn't resist Ye Fusion's punch, which made him feel endless fear and despair. Before he saw the flower, when interpreting the language, he thought Ye Fusion was very lucky. He thought that his talent was no worse than Ye Fusion's, so he became jealous and things then happened. The main figures of Qingzu Zugong Palace stood up one after another, their hearts trembling. The scene was too shocking. Who would dare to think that the young people who left a few years ago had been coerced so badly? The disciple made a mistake. You didn't punish me, but you also forgive him. If so, let him follow him. Ye Fusion's words fell, the thunder dragon roared, and the endless lightning light directly penetrated Gumu's body, making the entire thunder light shine. Gumu shouted, the thunder dragon whistled with his body and landed on the ground. A dragon groaned, thunder dragon disappeared, but Gumu lay on the ground like a dead man. It was terrible. In fact, if it was just today's things, Ye Fusion would not be like that, but when many things happened, such as Chia Fanwei, the elimination of General Qin, and the victory of the Murong family, this head of the Qingzu city shrine never stood up and said a word. He is no longer worthy to sit in this position. Today, relying on himself to enter the sky, there is nothing left. When the disciples spoke to destroy Qin Yi's reputation, the strong attitude towards General Qin really angered him. So there's the scene. Ling Qiu's face was dead, and he was desperate to see the teacher lying on the ground, only feeling a cold bite in his heart. A rustling sound came out, and the vine rolled up his body and crashed into the air. With a bang, he and his teacher lay down together, and the meridians in the body shattered. Ye Fusion, even if you have complaints about Qingzu Zugong, it is too heavy to start now. Someone in Qingzu Zugong said in the dead space, a close friend of the ancient palace master Gumu. Is it heavy? Ye Fusion may not have done this before, but in recent years, he has experienced a lot. Luo Zhenlin used his Iroh to force Kang Ye, murder, Yunchu Kingdom and the other 6 realm emperors to betray. He also saw human nature more clearly. Jiu Mu and Lin Qiu are so behaving, can he suppress each other here, right? If Jiu Mu hates him, he can leave after great eligibility. If there was something about General Qin and Qin Yi, who was he looking for? At that time, it made no sense to kill Gumu again. Leng Ji, you will be the ruler of Qingzu Zugong Palace in the future. Ye Fusion looked at Leng Qingfeng Street. Leng Qingfeng is good, and he can control this position. Leng Qingfeng's heart was complicated, and he didn't expect Ye Fusion to be so strong, but after all, Jiu Mu was the master of Qingzu Zugong Palace and was abandoned by Ye Fusion. I am afraid that Zugong's heart is unstable. He did this Gongju, what happened after Ye Fusion left? I can't wait. What qualifications do you have to win the position of head of Qingzu Zugong Palace? Several ancient wooden figures said. Ye Fusion's indifferent eyes looked around the crowd, then he shouted, where is Yin Zuwei? His voice fell, and the temperature of Qingzu Academy seemed to drop suddenly. Above the void, a figure stood proudly, flooding the heavens. When their breath came, the people of Qingzu Academy were physically angry calm. The figure that appeared in the void was like the king of the void. Yes, a voice rang out. Who isn't sure? Ye Fusion said coldly. Those who were dissatisfied looked at the empty, moving figure. What is the field of these people? I will determine the position of the emperor of the Nandu kingdom. Will I not be able to win the position of the master of the Qingzu Academy? Ye Fusion seems to be a person, very strong. Hearing this sentence, the heart of the Qingzu Academy set off a rough sea. Can Ye Fusion win the position of emperor? see you, Ye Fuxian said. Hua Jiu looked at him with a smile, stepped forward, walked to Ye Fuxian, and Diao made a long beep, and came to Ye Fuxian and Hua Jiu's feet. General Qin, sister, if you find something, you can go to the East Sea Academy to find the owner of Yizhang Palace. If you still can't solve it, you can go to King Nindu Palace to find the current emperor, who is Siyu's puppet. Ye Fuxian looked at Qin Shui and Qin Yihan with a smile. I'm leaving, big brother, be careful. When the voice fell, he saw the black wind carving spread its wings, and above the sky, the prince went with him. In Qingzhou Zugong, many people stared at the departing figure, and their hearts couldn't calm down for a long time. This scene, I am afraid they will never forget it. This bastard. Qin Yi's eyes were reddish, and he walked away. Why he made such a big battle, he naturally understood that it was for his consideration. There was a drop of crystal tear flowing from her eyes, but Mimu was still smiling. Once young, the eagle has spread its wings. This sky can no longer hold it. Chapter 314, Femininity. When you are only slightly stronger than others, it is possible that others will be jealous and disobedient. However, when you are strong enough that others don't even have the courage to be jealous, all that's left is to look up and have deep admiration. Ye Fuxian wanted to make such an impression on Qingzhou Zugong. Since then, who would dare to disrespect General Qin and Sister Qin Yi? After all, I still couldn't meet my family on this trip, but things on this side have been completely resolved. In the land of hundreds of countries, the emperors of all countries went to the Kangye Kingdom and Nandu Kingdom to pay tribute. The people who had spoken to Luo Tianzi for drinking all expressed their willingness to obey completely and accept all the conditions. Hua Fengyu and Nandu Wening stayed in the Nandu King Palace for a few days, and then the group set off to return to the eastern wasteland. Followed by Wajiyu to the Wangu sect, and then arrived at the Qin Garden of Chengdu city. When Ye Fuxian and the rest of his life returned to the hut, more than a month had passed since their departure. Shushan's straw hut was quiet and harmonious before. Bamboo forest, in front of the hut. The little brother is back. Bi Tang Exinger smiled gently when she saw Ye Fuxian, with two dimples on her face. Well, I didn't see you in January, Sister Exinger looks good again. Ye Fuxian laughed. Biatang Exinger was used to it, and smiled and said, sit down, I'm going to have dinner soon. I'll call the four brothers. I will be a grandmother to do so in the future. A long sigh came, Ye Fuxian smiled and looked at the five fierce brothers who were burning. Luo Fan looked at Ye Fuxian fiercely, revealing his scar. He was going down the mountain for a while, but the third brother said that he was no longer cooking for the second sister. Suffering, too miserable, miserable. Are you complaining? A laugh came, and Qian Ying of Sister She came out of the bamboo forest and asked with a smile. Sister, sit down, the food will be ready soon. Luo Fan was full of enthusiasm for a moment, how could he look like a dead man now? Sister She then smiled with satisfaction, her eyes fell on Ye Fuxian, and she smiled gently, did the little brother bring an interpreter? Brother, see you reopened Wezong. Ye Fuxian said. Well, I often let see you come to play when I have time. Zhu Hui laughed. After hearing some of them talk about this battle, I regret that I didn't go to Nindu country to watch the battle in person. Ye Fuxian scratched his head and laughed, of course you can't embarrass the hut. Well, there's finally a polite little brother in the hut. Zhu Hui said, come and sit down. Luo Fan was black-faced, and Yi Shaoxi was crying when he came over. Did they get an impression in Sister Shi's mind? Luo Fan and Bi Tang Exinger returned and the food was ready. A group of people sat down and Ye Fuxian asked, what about the three brothers? Three brothers practice, Bi Tang Exinger responded. Ye Fuxian nodded gently, just like what Zhu Hui thought. I heard some of them say, young master, your martial arts combat power is much better than spells. Ye Fuxian nodded. That martial practice belonged to Ye Qingdi. The 9 strikes magic power was taught by the seniors of the Snow Ape. In fact, when it came to high realms, there were no absolute pros and cons for mage and martial practitioners, depending on which talent stood out more. Elder, if you go to Zongzhou, you will say that the young master and the rest of his life will go to the martial arts workshop there. Zhu Hui said to Zhu Ye. Now, Zhu Ye asked. What did you say? Zhu Hui smiled. Okay. Zhu Ye put his chopsticks aside with a sad look, and then left the side. No human rights. I haven't eaten this food. Thank you, sister. Ye Fuxian smiled brightly, sister was very kind to him. Hearing Ye Fuxian's voice and tearing up with tears in the snowy night, he couldn't hear his heart. At this time, the sound of footsteps came, Ye Fuxian turned his eyes, and saw a cold and beautiful figure coming, that is Lulan Zhu, the girl from the ancient country of Lulan. But what made Ye Fuxian stunned was that at this time, the virgin woman Lu Langxiu, who was chrysanthemum and pure, was holding a basin with a lot of clean clothes, and Ye Fuxian was choked directly by the rice. Cough. Ye Fuxian coughed. This. Is it still the girl from the ancient country of Lulan, the cold beauty Lulanzu? The silver beauty Lu Langxiu glanced at Ye Fuxian, and then said to Zhu Hui, I will dry the clothes. Well, come and eat together after drying. Zhu Hui nodded. Okay. Lu Langxiu nodded slightly and walked towards the back of the bamboo forest. Biatang Exinger Mimu looked at Ye Fuxian, she looked a little embarrassed, she had done this before. What's wrong with my little master? Zhu Gehui asked Ye Fuxian, who had been there. It's okay, I really want to eat. Ye Fuxian lowered his head to eat. Thinking about the prestige of the fourth and fifth brothers when they came down the mountain, he slowly accepted. Thatched huts are magical places and cannot be seen with the naked eye. Maybe. Washing clothes is also an exercise. Slow down, Sister she said with a smile, since you want to be a servant, Sister will help you adjust. Ehem. Ye Fuxian, who had lowered his head to eat, heard this sentence and was stung again, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was moved to cry. How can he be so kind? Lu Langxiu returned after drying her clothes and stood quietly beside her. First, give his sister a bowl of rice, said the second teacher. Okay. Lu Langxiu nodded, her eyes looked at Ye Fuxian, her hands were outstretched, Ye Fuxian sent a bowl to eat in the couple's hands. Lu Lan Zusheng prepared good food for Ye Fuxian. Sister she said, sit down and eat together. Lu Langxiu sat quietly next to Ye Fuxian, and Ye Fuxian had eaten with his head full. Little master, eat more. Zhu Hui smiled and offered food to Ye Fuxian, watching Lu Langxiu say, my little brother is very thin, I will give more food to my younger brother. You have to do all the trifles in the future, and don't ask others to give no you. Lu Langxiu continued to nod, Ye Fuxian lowered his head to eat, and Luo Fan, Ye Shaoxi, and Bitang Exinger all sneered. All my life looking at all this with satisfaction, or the attention of the second teacher and sister, and Fuxian has to get used to it. Zhu Hui smiled and looked at Ye Fuxian and Lu Langxiu. The young master was good everywhere, but he was too good for beauty. Since Lu Langxiu was actively asking to be a servant, of course she had to show her attitude. He heard that this is what the ancient kingdom of Lulan meant, thinking of entering the hut to become the disciple of the hut. Let's start with the waiter. However, at this time, Lu Langxiu was still very satisfied with it. She did not have the temperament of a princess and was very kind. She could slowly adjust and become a competent servant in the future. After returning from dinner after a snowy night, Zhu Hui asked him, are you ready? Well, Shaoxi and the rest of the life can go to Wulianchang at any time. Zua nodded. Then take them now. Zhu Hui smiled. Okay, Snowy nodded. Can I go and have a look? Lu Langxiu whispered at this time. Mimu looked at Zhu Hui. Bring him, Zhu Hui said to Zuye. Zua replied, then took Ye Fuxian, the rest of his life, and Lu Langxiu left the hut, and came to another hill in the academy. This mountain is the place where Zongzushan is located, called Zhongshan, and the palaces and attics in the mountains are scattered and eternal, like a fairy mountain. Ye Fuxian thought that the hut was probably the simplest mountain among the 9 mountains in the academy. Of course, there were only a few people in the hut. The Chongshan Bullion Refinery was a very famous training ground in the academy. Many disciples came to practice every day. When Ye Fuxian came to Wulianchang, they caused a lot of waves. It seems that the disciples in Zhongshan Mountain already knew the news, which is clearly the news that Chang Zongzu of Zhongshan Mountain intends to let go. Standing on the edge of Wulianchang, Ye Fuxian's heart was slightly surging. This was the first time he had come to train at the academy. This martial arts factory was made of white stone and was a canyon with a depth of tens of meters. At the edge of the martial arts factory, there were several giant stones carved into statues, depicting a humanoid shape, bent over the Wu refinery, facing the Wu refinery, from which a terrible coercion came to the Wu refinery, oppressing the practitioners in the Wu refinery. Even though Ye Fuxian stood at the edge of Wulianchang without stepping into it, he still felt the coercion of a prince. In addition, the entire Wulianchang also looks like a magic circle. Ye Fuxian felt a strong suction force, as if he was about to be pulled into the canyon, which was a very strong gravity. Many people appeared around them, their eyes looking to the side. Little master, it seems that Chairman Zongzushan has announced the news. Now that many disciples from the heavy mountains have come, I am afraid that I want you to be the companion of the hut, and you have to do it yourself, my brother will not be with you. Zhu Yehi patted Ye Fusion's shoulder and smiled, then left alone, leaving the three of them. Some fun, Ye Fusion said to himself, for the rest of our lives, let's go down. The words fell, and they stepped in the air, walked towards Wu Lianchang, and just stepped into the sky above the canyon. An enormous gravitational force fell on them, sucking them in, and the speed of the fall suddenly seemed faster, as if two paths were crossing into the canyon. This gravity is so strong. Ye Fusion stood in the canyon, only feeling the very heavy footsteps. Not only that, but above his head, the terrifying princes of the terrible stone statue came from the huge stone statue, which made him feel awkward. This is indeed a great place to practice martial arts. Lu Langxiu did not come down, stood on the edge of the canyon and watched quietly. Apart from him, there were many people looking at Ye Fusion at the edge of Wu Lianchang. One of them had a great temper, and one smiled and said, I heard that Ye Fusion killed Luo Junlin, who is on the second floor in the sky, based on the 7th order phase. Just don't know what level of combat power Luo Junlin is. By the way, Ye Fusion's combat power is presumptuous, a young man laughed. Yes, in that case, if I want to find Ye Fusion or the rest of my life, if you want to discuss with Ye Fusion or the rest of your life, you don't need to be polite. Rare. Chapter 315, Martial Arts Training. At the edge of Wu Lianchang, the more people gathered above the canyon, the more disciples came from the mountain. On the slopes of Wu Lianchang, there is a mountain peak and a building on the top of the mountain, where is the place where Shen Zongzu trains. At this point Zongzu stood on the edge of the mountain and looked at Wu Lianchang. The lodge proposed to let Ye Fusion come to practice in Zhongshan Wu Lianchang. He naturally likes it, and can hone and inspire the disciples in Zhongshan. Ye Fusion naturally noticed the many figures gathered in the canyon, but didn't care much, trying to walk, run, and exert the power of martial arts in the canyon. He found that his every move was severely restricted, and under the prince's terrifying pressure and gravity, every move became jerky and difficult. This land of martial arts is huge. Naturally, there were many other practitioners besides him. Their nature is different. Most of them were practitioners above the heavenly realms. In addition, there are weapons thrown by Bashi at Wu Lianchang, all of which are 18 types. If you can move freely in this realm of martial arts like flat ground, it will be a great breakthrough. Ye Fusion secretly said that under the strong pressure and gravity, he can have a certain speed and strength. If there is no pressure, it must be a wave. At this time, a figure jumped in the sky, descended from the sky, and a roar came out, and a young figure appeared in front of Ye Fusion and the rest of his life. Duan Lan, the 8th order method, good at martial arts, please advise. The youth's eyes fell on Ye Fusion and challenged him. In the canyon, countless eyes fell on this side, and someone had already started to act. Ye Fusion, 7th order method, please enlighten. Ye Fusion said with a smile, and the visitors did not refuse. Since the Zhongshan disciples wanted to use him as friends, too, he could also treat the disciples in Zhongshan as his friends. Duan Lan's footsteps sprained, and then a huge meteor stride walked towards Ye Fusion. Every step was extremely heavy and terrifying. He quickly ran, as if carrying the power of terror, filled with a sense of violent power. A punch broke, Duan Lan's fist hit Ye Fusion, carrying a terrifying power. It was as if the coercion and gravity in this martial arts field were used by him, and merged with this mighty punch, the action flowed. There is no limit at all. Of course, there are many drying hours here. On Ye Fusion's body, there was a dragon howling, and when he saw the attack from the other side, he stepped out, then raised his fist, and smashed forward, although he was not used to the coercion and gravity here. It was inconsistent, but it didn't affect his speed and strength at all, as if a giant dragon elephant exploded from his fist. The attacks of the two collided, and a huge roar occurred, then Duan Lan's arms trembled, her body flew upside down and spat out blood. Good power. Duan Lan looked at Ye Fusion instead. Ye Fusion used Ye Qingdai's refining method to purify the body. The three great refining souls are all powerful sacred beasts. They were already copper skin and iron bones, and then the power exploded with the sound of the dragon elephant. It is conceivable that how strong. Hey, another figure came, and it was Quashan who set foot on the mountain with Ye Fusion. He was training in the mountains, and his burly body fell for the rest of his life. Quashan said, I want to challenge you to try Koba. Okay. He nodded for the rest of his life, then rushed out of the body, and a loud voice came out. Due to the coercion and gravity, every time he took a step, he seemed very heavy, making the ground tremble, but the sound made people extreme. His life, and the highly explosive body landed in front of Quashan and punched out. With a loud bang, Quotient's body exploded, many people trembled violently, and the strength of the rest of the life was abnormal. After that, several people challenged Ye Fusion and the rest of his life one after another, the two began to mop. The body gradually became familiar with the sense of oppression in Wulianchang, and their movements became smoother. How do you feel? A group of young people stood together in the canyon, asking the middle figure. The strength is very strong. Ye Fusion has to train. The body itself contains a tyrannical power. For the rest of his life, his explosive power is even more terrifying than Ye Fusion's. It must be an innate gift. He practices training. Not weaker than Ye Fusion. Well, it's said that for the rest of his life he lifted the tripod on Choge and removed the tripod. He practiced the path of magic. The figure in the middle laughed and said, "Go and try." Okay. The person next to him nodded, then stepped out, took a volley from the top of the canyon, then descended on Ye Fusion and the rest of his life. This is Chia Hu Chu. Many people showed their sharp eyes. Chia Hu Chu is in the first layer of the world, but he is very good at power, born with divine power, and is a very talented person in Chongshan. His talent can rank in the top 5 in Chongshan, and also Shinzongzu disciple. Shochu, the first flow of the sky, I am too familiar with Wulianchang, you two go together. Chia Hu Chu opened his mouth and said that although Ye Fusion killed Luo Junlin in the Deferred King Temple, this did not hinder Chia Hu Chu's confidence, especially fighting in Wulianchang. The rest of his life stepped out, the ground shook, he shouted angrily, and went against the trend, his fist fell towards Shochu. Shochu glanced indifferently for the rest of his life, and his strength exploded. He hit his leg, and as soon as he rumbled, went straight for the rest of his life. The two corpses collided in the void with a loud sound. The rest of his life was blown out and landed on the ground. At this moment, the body slid backwards, almost falling. Shochu took 2 steps back but stood steadily. On the body of the remnant of life, a dark golden light shone, and the body seemed to be covered with a layer of dark gold armor, and a terrifying magic power bloomed, like the king of the world, and the body ran out again. Shochu was not afraid, and ran forward. The two collided in the middle. The sound of thunder and horror kept coming out, and every time they collided, they were shocked. Finally, the bodies of the two were separated again. Chia Hu Chu's hands trembled slightly. He looked at the rest of his life as if he was looking at a strange person, and saw the dark golden light on the other side shaking, as if possessed by a true demon. Shochu turned around and went to where the weapon was placed, and then took out a large mace. The mace was thrown by Bashi, and his whole body was white. Shochu dragged the club and made a loud noise as it rubbed against the ground. He looked at the rest of his life and said, "Take a gun too." The rest of his life was filled with the terrifying dark golden guangwa in his hand, and he stepped out. He didn't go to pick up the weapon and went straight to Shochu. When Shochu saw this scene, his stick danced in his hand, and the wind howled and roared. When the rest of his life came, he flew in the air, and then the stick suddenly fell into the air, as if to split the earth. Bang! For the rest of his life, he used flesh and blood to fight against the mace, but felt that the power of the sky was coming from him, and his body exploded directly, fell to the ground, and vomited blood. But as if he didn't feel it, he got up and wiped the blood at the corner of his mouth. Ye Fusion's brows slightly frowned. He lifted his pace and walked towards the weapon. He took the stick. At this moment, he seemed to be lifting a mountain peak. The stone stick was very long and heavy. Ye Fusion can hold it with both hands, and then pull it fiercely, both hands dancing, a little tiring. He somewhat understood why Shochu could explode the rest of his life with a single blow, and the weight of this weapon was simply terrifying. If you are used to the practice and can withstand very heavy attacks, you can imagine the power. It's useless, you just came to the Wu refinery and you can't get used to the use of such heavy weapons. Chia Hu Chu said, of course his belief has its reasons, he is used to the strength and gravity of the Wu refinery, but Ye Futian and the rest of his life just arrived. Ye Fusion ignored his words and pulled out a long stick, then danced with both hands, from slow to fast. The movement seems to contain an extraordinary rhythm, the movement becomes a little faster, the amplitude is not large, but the feeling is more and more smooth. As the baguette swept, the wind whistled around Ye Fusion's body, getting faster and faster, and gradually becoming clouds and water, a strong momentum gathered in Ye Fusion's body. The prince's wish bloomed, and the faint shadow of the cape appeared, and when the big stone stick danced, the sound of a sonic boom sounded faintly. Ye Fusion's body headed for Shochu, a huge golden winged Daping wing shone behind him, and the power of heaven and earth seemed to be attached to it. Shochu frowned and felt a burst. Stress. On his body, an extremely wild breath erupted. Fa Xiang is a big demon cow. When he saw Ye Fusion's rotating body sweep over with heaven-shocking power, he roared, holding the mace in midair and exploding. The general situation is like Mount Tai, bursting with tremendous force, and a loud explosion. The mace shattered directly under the friction of the long stick, and the long stick swept over Chia Huchu's body. With a bang, Chia Huchu's body directly lie down, blood spit, and bones I don't know how many are broken. Several figures came down, held Shochu's body, looked at Ye Fusion indifferently. One of them stepped out, and said coldly, please enlighten me. Practice Chongshan likes wheel war. Ye Fusion sarcastically said, sorry, I don't accept it now. You. The other side looked at Ye Fusion coldly. When I get used to the Jiabu refinery, I will play with you. Ye Fusion turned to the rest of his life and said, let's go and practice. The rest of his life glanced indifferently and left with Ye Fusion. Many people trembled, and the talent of the Kotang disciples was really terrible. As soon as they entered Wu Lianchang, Shochu, who was at the 7th level of the Law Realm, swept across the sky. If they wait until they get used to Wu Lianchang, I am afraid that it will be even more terrible. This familiarity is a long time ago. Ye Fusion tempered his body and strength in the Wulian refinery. Unknowingly, 2 months have passed, and Ye Fusion and the rest of his life have been able to ignore the coercion and gravity in Wu Lianchang, and their strength has reached the limit. They can imagine that if they get out of the Wu Lianchang battle, they should be as light as swallowing, moving faster and becoming stronger. Chapter 316, Miracle is Born. In Wu Lianchang, Ye Fusion is currently practicing boxing. The fist skill seems to have a beautiful rhythm, widening and closing, like an emperor. Inside the fist, there are dragons, apes, and lightning. The power is extraordinary, the body is flickering, and it runs like a penguin. Under the strong suppression, it moves like a cloud. After practicing boxing, he raised his stick and danced, but practiced with pure strength, still making terrifying sonic booms. Tianxing 9 strikes does not gather together, but uses pure strength to control the rhythm, but that is also because there is no tendency to gather heaven and earth, making each move more difficult and requires more strength. What's more, still in the field of martial arts, holding a giant stick. But Ye Fusion is still practicing again and again. Sometimes the action is blocked, the explosion sound is loud, and people are constantly staring at him. When Ye Fusion cut it, it seemed that the invisible power was becoming more and more terrifying. With his dancing stick, a terrible crackling sound was made in the body, the dragon groaned louder, the sound of thunder sounded louder, and the veins seemed to roll wildly. Finally, when Ye Fusion swept with another stick, the void seemed to tremble for him. Above his body, a stronger breath permeated, the martial arts refining body broke through the ground, and the 8th level law phase. Looking at the rest of his life, he saw that he was staring at a large, empty stone statue. A few days ago, he had also broken through to the world. This was Ye Fusion's teaching practice method for the rest of his life. Watching stone statues can weaken his spiritual power. This land of martial arts itself was a suitable place for martial arts practitioners to practice. Mayor Zhong Zushan is good at martial arts skills. But Ye Fusion also used to practice spiritual power. He put down the stone stick, looked at the stone statue in the air, and watched the idea freely, and suddenly the stone statue became clear, as if he came alive. Face to face, the coercion came, and became very terrible, suppressing his mental strength. Ye Fusion didn't care about that, so he stared at the stone statue to endure the coercion with his mental strength. Immediately sweat seeped out from his forehead. The pressure of mental strength is more painful than physical pressure. Every now and then, Ye Fusion needs to rest, and then temper the martial arts. Finally, after a few more days, Ye Fusion's mental strength sitting in the canyon also broke through the world. Both the martial arts and mage abilities have stepped into the faculty level of the 8th level, and they are getting closer and closer to the sky. Previously, when practicing in Qingzhou City, the sky was a legend. Standing up, Ye Fusion stepped forward, holding a stone stick, looking at the edge of the canyon. Loudly, the people of the world in the sky under the heavy mountains want to challenge, please wait any time. The voice echoed in Wu Lianchang. Countless eyes suddenly fell on Ye Fusion's body. Is he finally starting to accept challenges? Shochu's defeat more than 2 months ago made many people want to try. Now, he is in a legal state, and it is crazy enough to challenge anyone in the next world. The next celestial realm, but covers the realm of the first floor of the sky to the 3rd level of the sky. In the void, a figure stood proudly, sweeping towards Ye Fusion. He stepped out, walked through the canyon, countless eyes fell on the man. his burly body, explosive flesh, and short hair seemed extremely strong. Mobe, the tyrannical figure on the second floor of the sky. This is Brother Mob. Many people exclaimed. Mobe is also a very famous disciple in the heavy mountain, only to see his body fall from the void, and the terrifying oppressive army descends. Ye Fusion looked to the other side, and a huge pressure force came, as if no one had descended, but a mountain was falling towards him. Explosion. A white light shone, and Mobe's feet seemed to have turned into a mountain peak, descending, trying to crush everything under his feet. Ye Fusion looked up, and the long stick in his hand danced and danced. His strength became stronger and stronger. Gradually, a terrifying hurricane was formed, as if it was carried by a long stick dance. That terrifying coercion enveloped the heavens and the earth. Ye Fusion shook the stick with both hands, and then returned to Mobe, who descended into the void. At this time, if the mace is a dragon, the situation changes. Mobe seems to have turned into a stone statue of a prince and stepped on everything. At the moment of the collision, a terrible explosion sounded, and then everyone saw the rocks breaking, and Mobe's body flew straight into the sky, moving faster and louder than when it came. Blood splattered from the void, and everyone saw that Mobe's body was like an erratic duck, obviously unharmed, and a person's body flashed, catching his body. A few more mouthfuls of blood sprayed out, and Mobe's face was pale and bloodless. This. Everyone was shaking, only cringing. How powerful Mobe's volley was, it ended in a bleak ending. Who else? Ye Fusion looked up at the sky above, and a long stick stood beside him, like a god, and the coercion in the valley remained, but now Ye Fusion seems to be unaffected. He gnawed his flesh in the martial arts field, his physique became stronger, and he swept with a pound of stone sticks. He collected the punches, and the power was imaginable. Now he has entered the realm of the eighth order of law. Mobe, the strong man on the second floor, was suppressed with flesh and blood. How could he withstand such a blow? Ye Fusion's voice echoed in the gorge, shocking the heroes. Countless eyes stared at the handsome figure, and the disciples practicing on the mountain were a little depressed, but this is their field. Ye Fusion ran and pretended. However, Mobe was defeated, and the people of the world within the sky were unable to defeat Ye Fusion, and few were able to fight. At this time, a straight figure in the void shot straight into the canyon, and a loud explosion sounded, and the entire canyon martial art shook. People's bodies trembled accordingly, and they looked in that direction, and they saw a huge and peerless body appear like a giant. Ye Fusion looked at the other side with a strange look. He had never seen a man this big. The rest of his life was already very burly, but this person, he was even taller than the rest of his life, and his body was covered with horizontal flesh. Standing there like a mountain. Turing, should he shoot? Everyone saw the figure glued there. Many people looked in one direction. A young man stood with his hands. It was the first disciple Zhong Zushan, hated by Zhongli, known as the first disciple of Zhongshan, Wanghao realm. Talent is very high. Turing is also a disciple of Zhong Zushan, and only listens to his words. Turing's shot was now clear on the command. Zhongli hated his hands and knew how strong Turing's talent was. If he talks about pure strength, the whole mountain can't find a second person. Ye Fusion swept the Zhongshan disciples. Turing took the opportunity, and let him defend Zhongshan. Turing's massive body was like a pile of meat. He walked to the side, then raised a terrible stone hammer, and walked towards Ye Fusion. His eyes were full of intense light, and his legs were running, so big. The speed is not slow at all. Every step out, seems to shake the mountain. Ye Fusion actually felt a strong sense of oppression from the opponent's body. The long stick danced. Ye Fusion's body spun, collected a tremendous punch, and swept towards Turing. Turing fell with a large stone hammer and collided with Ye Fusion's long stick. Bang! A terrible loud sound came out, and Ye Fusion's body exploded. The long stick continued to dance, trying to gain momentum, but Tulin came in one step, and fell with a hammer. A loud sound. Ye Fusion's body was directly hit and flew out. His legs were unstable. He took the long stick rubbed into the ground to stabilize the body without falling. The third level of the heavens is born with divine power. Ye Fusion looked at Turing, the same monster as the rest of his life. Turing's eyes continued fiercely. Ye Fusion stood up, but saw a figure running forward. For the rest of his life, he was holding a painting function spear, as if a demon descended from the sky, towards the image. Spirit kills. Turing raised his hand, banged the hammer, and banged hard, and the rest of his life fell apart. Good explosive power. Ye Fusion looked at each other. Turing stood there, as if the stone statue above the valley turned into one. He was a born giant. Turing's strength is far more terrifying than Luo Junlin's. The people above the canyon are watching the battlefield below, they are not surprised. If anyone can beat Ye Fusion in the next level, then this person is definitely a map it works. Zhong Zushan once said that Turing's strength was the strongest he had ever seen. It is a pity that Turing's brain is not very smart. Alright, Turing stepped forward, and continued to Ye Fusion, looking at Roshan. Ye Fusion said, big head. Turing's footsteps stopped, and his ferocity was revealed. The expression seemed to swallow Ye Fusion. Good power, what's your name? Ye Fusion asked. Turing's fierce gaze stared at him, and then he continued to move forward, every step as if trembling. It was dropped with a hammer again. This time Ye Fusion did not fight hard, his body flickered, like a gust of wind to avoid this blow, and rose into the air to stare at the other side. Turing looked at Ye Fusion, his eyes were still fierce, and he launched another attack. Ye Fusion blinked continuously, without colliding with him, and everyone's eyes flickered. It seems that Ye Fusion is also smart, and does not choose to directly collide with Turing. Not to mention such a huge difference. Even in the same situation, Ye Fusion's strength is also not necessarily comparable to Turing's. It's fierce. Ye Fusion looked at Ling Ling fiercely. Can you hide? Turing finally spoke, his voice thick. Fighting is not just a clash of forces. There are many ways to defeat you, but I value your strength and don't want to hurt you. Ye Fusion said, the other mountains in the academy still have talented people. Turing's strength, he only saw the rest of his life on it. Many people were silent for a while. This man was chased after feeling extremely embarrassed and only knew how to dodge. Chapter 317, Qin Dynasty proposes marriage. Turing's big eyes stared at Ye Fusion, and when he stepped on him, he jumped into the air, and the warmongering attacked Ye Fusion again. The wind aura enveloped the body, and a gust of wind blew, and Ye Fusion stepped out, and many shadows appeared in the void in an instant. Turing's warhammer was chopped into the afterimage, and then a boon slammed to the side, rubbing its body around him. Bang, bang, bang. Constantly crashing sounds. In a short time, Turing suffered dozens of attacks. His body fell to the ground, and his Roshan-like body was not affected at all, staring at the void. Silhouette. You can't hurt me. Turing looked at Ye Fusion fiercely. See clearly. Ye Fusion said to Turing, and then his body turned, completely shaking and headed straight for the canyon. Ye Fusion's body came to the center of the statue, and his body danced in the void. The momentum and coercion in the statue suddenly gathered with him with his stick dance, becoming stronger and stronger. Looking down, Ye Fusion looked at Turing in the sky, then his body headed towards the sky, like lightning. Turing stared at the figure descending from the sky. At this moment, he developed an illusion, as if the stone statues had come to life. The force of the stone statues merged into Ye Fusion's body. At this moment, Ye Fusion was like a god in heaven. At this moment, the long stick seemed to have a dazzling gravity spell bonus, turned into 10,000 pounds, and shattered with the highest force. The world made a loud booming sound. Wherever I pass, light appears, and I feel its power. Turing felt a kind of tremor, he roared, raised his warmongering and crashed into the void. Bang! There was a loud sound, the warhammer's attack was broken, Turing closed his eyes, and a loud sound came out. His huge body couldn't help but tremble slightly, but felt that there was nothing abnormal in his body. Opening his eyes, he noticed that the stick was hacking beside him, passing by, the ground still shaking. Ye Fusion emptied his body and laughed, you are very strong, but you can't win by relying on strength in the battlefield of life and death. The weakness is too obvious. Practice well. After all, he looked at the rest of his life and said, let's go. For the rest of his life, he flew into the sky and left with Ye Fusion. Lu Langxiu went far before. Around Wu Lianchang, countless eyes stared at the departing figure, and there was a slight wave in his heart. The last stick was like borrowing the coercion of a stone statue above the canyon. The shot only trembled, if it hit Turing, the consequences would be unimaginable. Ye Fusion and the rest of his life returned to the hut just in time for lunch. Lu Langxiu consciously helped him with rice, but Ye Fusion had a bit of a habit. Young master has a good relationship with Liu Guo, Liu Feiyang and Liu Shenyu. Luo Fan asked, looking at Ye Fusion. Ye Fusion froze, wondering why Luo Fan suddenly asked this. He nodded and said, yes, good friend. Some things happened in the eastern wasteland during this time, and the Qin dynasty was relatively active. Luo Fan added, and Ye Fusion had a bad feeling, and asked, is this something to do with Liu Feiyang and Liu Shenyu? After returning from the Nandu kingdom, Wangu Zong Chixun went to the East Qin Academy to train. It is said that he has confirmed a love affair with Qin Li. In addition, the Qin dynasty and the king of the suspended palace and the Fuyun sect's first peak relationship has been established, and people from the two major powers have gone to the East Qin Academy to train. Luo Fan slowly said, at the beginning of the founding of the East Qin Academy, the Qin dynasty and Dong Hazong had persuaded the disciples of the main forces to train together. Today, the East Qin Academy has become a climate, and not long ago, the Qin dynasty it was announced that someone would be sent to Liu Guo to propose to Shan Cheng. The son of the king of Qin, Qin Yuan, is willing to marry Liu Shan's daughter, Liu Shenyu. The chopsticks in Ye Fusion's hands froze there, and there was a cold glint in his eyes. Qin dynasty, this is a problem. What does the Qin dynasty want to do? Ye Fusion's tone was cold, and he had not officially proposed marriage. Liu Guo never promised, so she immediately announced that she wanted to set foot on Liu Guo's marriage. Naturally, I want to dominate the hegemony. Zuai replied, from the start, the Qin dynasty seems to regard the academy as its biggest opponent, which means that in the mind of the Qin king, the academy will be the strongest obstacle to hegemony. They invited the academies and thatched huts. If the academies and thatched huts nodded and joined forces from the Qin dynasty, Dong Hazong, and the academy, they would naturally be able to dominate the eastern wasteland, but we refused, so now the Qin dynasty wants to unite the troops aimed at governance the location of the academy and thatched hut. Luo Fan said, Qin dynasty's ambition is no longer hidden. Will King Liu Guo agree? Ye Fusion asked. I don't know. Zuye and Luo Fan shook their heads, and the things involved were definitely not that simple. Ye Fusion's good mood suddenly became a bit bad, not to mention that Ye Wuchen and Liu Shenyu may have a relationship. Even if he doesn't, can he watch Liu Shenyu marry the Qin dynasty? From his point of view, however, it didn't seem like he was qualified to manage matters at all. The thatched hut had no reason to intervene in Liu Guo. Although he has a good relationship with Liu Feiyang and Liu Shenyu and Liu Shenyu are only Liu Guo's princes and princesses, they are afraid that they cannot decide Liu Shenyu's fate. This meal left Fusion, and he lost the mood. The news announced by the Qin dynasty was not only studied by the academy, but the entire eastern region that was gradually heard, caused a sensation. Especially the top forces in the eastern wasteland, they all know that Ye Fusion and Liu Shenyu seem to have a very good relationship. They walked closer, and even went to the Nandu kingdom. They were all traveling by Peng Liu from the Liu country. Now that the Qin dynasty had suddenly announced a message, how could it not cause any tremors? A few days later, there was news that the Qin dynasty had officially announced that he was going to Liu Guo to propose to relatives. The news broke again. Liu Guo, Royal Palace. In the courtyard, a middle-aged figure in a dragon robe sat quietly with his eyes closed. At this time, footsteps came, and the two figures stepped to the side, bowed to the figure with closed eyes and the *******, Father King. These two people were Liu Feiyang and Liu Shenyu. What is it? Wang Liu asked with his eyes closed. Father Wang, the wolf ambition of the Qin dynasty, he can't send a drowning fish into the tiger's mouth. Liu Feiyang said, and now the Qin dynasty has even announced the date of his proposed marriage, and he is anxious. An ambassador from the Qin dynasty came to see me first, saying that this time Qin Yuan, Qin Wang's son, will not marry Shen Yu into the Qin dynasty, but Qin Yuan will enter the Willow country. Liu Wang's eyes remained closed, opened slowly. Marriage and marriage are very different. If the sinking willow fish enters the Qin dynasty, it will become a hostage to the Qin dynasty. Instead, Qin Yuan will enter the Willow state, which is the quality of the Liu state. Qin Yuan was the youngest son of the king of Qin, who was extremely talented. He was born to the king of Qin and one of his spoils. Many people in the eastern wasteland knew that the Qin king was very fond of his young son. Liu Feiyang and Liu Shenyu were also stunned by King Liu's words. It turned out that the Qin dynasty had sent a secret ambassador. Moreover, the king of Kan's young son was excessive and vicious. Father Wang agrees, Liu Feiyang said. There is no promise or rejection, replied King Liu. Father Wang, even if it is a burden, but the ambitions of the Qin dynasty are now unknown in the east, and if the Qin dynasty will win in the future, the Liu kingdom will survive with the same name. Even if the Qin dynasty rules the east, the same needs must be ruled by others. The Qin dynasty says that no matter what happens in the future, Liu's status cannot be shaken. If Qin Yuan enters the Liu kingdom and the Qin dynasty are one family and they are not separated from each other. King Liu continued. Do you believe me, father? Liu Feiyang asked. What if you don't believe it? Liu Wang opened his eyes and looked at the children in front of him. You know why the Qin dynasty suddenly created the East Qin Academy to show ambition to compete for the world? Liu Feiyang shook his head. As far as I know, the Qin dynasty found and opened the ancient tombs of the ancestors of the Qin dynasty. You should know that the ancestors of the Qin dynasty were once the rulers of the eastern homeland. Wang Liu said, as a king, naturally he must consider clearly and promise what will be the result. If not agreed, what will be the end? The Qin dynasty first sent a secret ambassador to tell him, and then announced to the people of the whole world to pay his respects and let him choose. Is it an enemy or a friend? Liu Feiyang looked ugly, and said, Father, are you really willing to become a vassal of the Liu state? The Donghang army knows the ambitions of the Qin dynasty. Why would they want to join him? She does not understand. Fine, the world must be divided for a long time, and the world must be divided for a long time. This is the general trend of the world. It cannot be prevented by human power. If the balance is broken, there is a force that can override all forces, and the desert will be unified. Quote. Liu Wang sighed. It can only adapt to the general trend, and cannot go against it. There's a college and a thatched cottage. Liu Feiyang. Naive. King Liu looked at his son and continued, Do you know the hut? Do you know what the hut is for? Liu Feiyang looked at his father, thatched hut. He really didn't understand it, just that it was a magical place. The great disciple Kotang has long been famous and opened the sacred Sword Mountain. At this time, Jiu Dongyu, the third disciple of Kotang, also won the battle, and coupled with the strength revealed by the second disciple Choge Kotang, I ask you, is it the second and third disciples descended mountains, and in time, will they become another holy sword mountain? King Liu asked. Liu Feiyang's heart shook, and he found that his father saw much more than he did. What's more, the hut has 4 disciples, 5 disciples, and the talent of your friend Ye Fusion. You also saw that these people have grown up, and the desert, who can stop the hut? King Liu asked again that Liu Feiyang was speechless and his father was telling the truth. But the cottage, it seems that there is no ambition to dominate the hegemony. Liu Feiyang still refused to accept it. The thatched hut does not want to dominate, but the cottage wants to build a different eastern desert. King Liu looked into the void and muttered, Master Du Straw Hut is a strange person. Chapter 318, Villains. Mr. Cao Du is naturally a strange man, even if he really does not practice his remote, as long as he can create such a place, he can be called a strange man. In the eastern wasteland, there were many rumors about Lord Cao Du, but there were few who actually knew him. Dragon Mr. Cao Tang Du is nowhere to be seen at the end, and it is rumored that Kotang's disciples are often missing and can't find anyone else, let alone other troops. Regarding what Du Duo wanted to do, Liu Feiyang didn't know. Father Wang said that Du wanted to make a different Donghang, and he didn't understand it. The Qin dynasty spreads the world, targeting academies and thatched cottages, because at this time, only academies and thatched cottages are the Qin dynasty's biggest opponents. The eastern region has come to an inflection point. Under the general trend, what we can do is how to choose. Wang Liu slowly spoke. As the supreme power in the eastern wasteland, King Liu Guo, this seems a bit arrogant, but he understands that the current great giant in the eastern wasteland really understands that the eastern wasteland will change, from the eastern Qin academy. Nor at the time of creation. Otherwise, why would Dong Hazong, Wang Guzong, Zuawangdian, Fuyunjianzong and other forces enter the East Qin academy to train? The Qin dynasty only gave them a reason to choose. Now, the Qin dynasty gave him a reason to choose Liu. If I had to choose, I'd prefer the thatched hut. Liu Shenyu, who had been silent, looked at his father, his eyes fixed with firmness, and it was bad news for him to hear that the Qin dynasty wanted to propose relatives. King Liu would see his daughters Liu Feiyang and Liu Shenyu as his favorite children. Naturally he didn't want Liu Shenyu to be wronged. However, Liu Shenyu didn't seem to understand it. There is still a clear difference between the Qin dynasty and the thatched hut. The Qin dynasty created the Donghang Academy. In response to Ye Fusion's contradiction, the marriage observation sect, Cheng Xiaotang and Xingwang Dian, they used the Sword Saint and Fuyun sect's grudges to contact the Fuyun sect. Now, they had proposed to Liu Guo. Any means can be used for this purpose, and this is the Qin dynasty. In the hut, the man was honest. Choosing the Qin dynasty, if they are not the enemy of the thatched hut will do nothing for them. But if you choose the thatched hut, will the Qin dynasty give up? What's more, Kotang had no idea of an alliance with other forces at all, and he wouldn't know the consequences of resisting the Qin dynasty. Drowning fish, do you have a lover? King Liu asked Liu Shenyu. Liu Shenyu looked up, his dark eyes stared at his father, and he groaned for a moment. A human figure appeared subconsciously in his mind. At this moment, he couldn't help but remember many things. The first time he met was in the ancient world. Ye Fusion forcibly brought the two together. Then, each time, he gradually got used to it, as if it was taken for granted. Things. He thought of the Kangye country, the two walking by the lake, and the fireworks blooming in the sky. The scene was too beautiful. If he married the Qin dynasty and Qin Yuan, the youngest son of the Qin king. Thinking of this, Liu Shenyu suddenly laughed and understood his own heart, which was originally an image of accidental cultivation. Liu Shenyu nodded. Cottage, Ye Fusion. Wang Liu asked, I heard that he has a girlfriend named Hua Sheyu, who is training at Wang Wezong. Obviously, Wang Liu mistakenly thought that Liu Shenyang's lover was Ye Fusion. After all, he heard that Liu Feiyang and Liu Shenyu were often mixed with Ye Fusion, and Ye Fusion was very extraordinary. Compared to Ye Fusion, Ye Wutian Chen seems too low-key, so Wang Liu will have this misunderstanding. Not. Liu Shenyu shook his head gently. Not. Wang Liu showed a strange color and asked, who is it? Liu Shenyu lowered his head and did not speak. He sensed from his father's words that Liu Guo was under a lot of pressure at this time when the Qin dynasty proposed marriage. If it was Kotang's disciple who wanted to compete for someone, they might fight with the Qin dynasty. However, Ye Wuchen is not a disciple of Kotang, but trained in Fuyun Janzong. He can't even represent Fuyun Janzong, only the seventh peak sword. In this case, how will father choose? Seeing Liu Shenyu's expression, Wang Liu sighed in his heart and said, since this is the case, I ordered an invitation to invite young people from all armies to come to Liu Guo as guests, just in time to catch up with the Qin dynasty. Liu Shenyu was stunned and understood the meaning of his father. Soon, Liu Guo issued an invitation to the top forces in the eastern wasteland, inviting powerful parties from all walks of life to visit, many people wondering what Liu King meant. Is this ready to be accepted? Or refuse? However, no matter what the reason is, they can go and see the Qin dynasty to raise their relatives. They are also willing to go. I'm afraid there will be a storm. Once the marriage is successful, the Qin dynasty army will be a little scary and will occupy half of the eastern desert. Ellipsis. Fuyun Janzong, 7th peak. Today Ye Wuchen is a little restless, a little impetuous, and his practice is affected. He already knew the news of the Qin dynasty's marriage proposal, and now all the powers in the eastern wasteland were discussing this matter, and it was difficult for him to wonder. In addition, at the first peak of Fuyun Janzong, someone deliberately revealed the news to the 7th peak. The people of Fuyun Janzong have seen Liu Shenyu and Ye Wuchen walking very close. Li Doin, who liked Liu Shenyu, also died in the hands of Ye Wuchen. Many people in first peak speculated that Ye Wuchen's murder of Li Doin might have this reason. At this moment, on top of the sword peak, Ye Wuchen was standing alone facing the sea of clouds, and footsteps came from behind him. Sword, said the visitor. Liu Guo issued an invitation to invite all parties to Liu Guo. Ye Wuchen turned his head to look at the person, who ordered him to pay attention to Liu Guo's news. Besides the invitation, Liu Guo also sent a letter. The man stepped forward, handed the letter to Ye Wuchen, and carved the 7th peak of Fuyun Janzong, Ye Wuchen. His handwriting was Wangziu, as if written by a woman. Ye Wuchen tore the letter open. There was a stationery page inside, and he took it out. On the white paper, there was an equally elegant handwritten line. Last moment, can you come? Ye Wuchen looked at the simple 4-character word, folded the writing, and then closed it. He looked at the sea of clouds in front of him, and then a smile appeared in his eyes. These 4 words have shown his heart. He understands. Now that he understands, he will leave. The thatched hut. Ye Fusion also received news from Liu Guo, and Dust-Free had to leave. Ye Fusion and the rest of the life were carved into the mountain by the black wind. The second teacher asked Lu Langxiu to follow. Several people went to Qinyun first, then to Quni and set off in the direction of Liu Guo. Liu Guo is located in the eastern region of Donghanging. To the east of Donghanging, there are 2 top armies, Liu Guo and Fuyun Janzong. The vast nation, which ruled over an endless vast area, had more control over the territory than any major army outside the Qin dynasty. However, what really determines the strength of the top-level forces is not the control of the territory, but the strength of those at the top of the pyramid, and the 8 disciples of Kotang. It was because there were some disciples who were extremely arrogant. The king of Liu City came alive for a while. The main forces of all the great powers came one after another, and the forces of all parties in the Liu country were also gathered in the land of the king city, and they wanted to witness the wedding of the Qin dynasty. When Ye Fuxian arrived, he did not immediately go to the palace, but went to a restaurant in the city to eat. Mixed restaurants and news are the most sensitive, especially large restaurants. At this time, many people in Ye Fuxian's restaurant were discussing the Qin dynasty's proposal. I heard that Qin Yuan's son Qin Yuan arrived at Wangcheng yesterday morning. Is this true or false? Naturally it is true. Not only Qin Yuan arrived, but also many people, including Princess Qin Mengruo, Qian Shenzong of Donghazong and son Qin Li, Prince of Qin, Qin Yuan visited the palace within a day after arriving in Wangcheng yesterday. The 8 princes. It is wise and polite. It seems that the Qin dynasty is very diligent in this matter. It was reported today that King Kang was very satisfied with Qin Yuan and praised the dragon among his people, apparently supporting the marriage between Qin Yuan and Princess Shenyu. Qin Yuan was born to the king of Qin and his concubine Nan Fei. Nan Fei is a very famous beauty in the Qin dynasty. It is said that Qin Yuan inherited the advantages of King Qin and Nan Fei. He is handsome and a beautiful man. They are all extraordinary. Qin dynasty comes from the heart, it will not be harmed by Princess Shenyu. Everyone thought that many people subconsciously looked at Ye Fuxian and Lu Langxiu. For no reason, Ye Fuxian is a beautiful man with an extraordinary appearance, and the cold beauty of Lu Langxiu with silver eyes is also very rare. Ye Fuxian saw the strange expression in this scene, and looked at him for what? Is His Highness the Prince of Qin? Someone's kidding. You think I look like that? Ye Fuxian asked with a smile. Haha, it's not like, if it's Prince Qin, you should be able to see some other people, and although the appearance is not bad, it seems to feel a little lacking. It is true that there is no royal temperament. Someone said with a smile, only, brothers in Taiwan don't mind, it can't be compared. Compare Ye Fuxian to Prince Qin Yuan, maybe he doesn't mind. It can't be compared. The Qin surname doesn't deserve it. A cold voice came out, and the rest of his life sank. His voice dropped, and the restaurant fell silent in an instant. Isn't that Qin? This person actually dared to say it. Since you dare to say, it is natural, are these people also top-level people? However, even if it is a top-level person, who dares to say that Qin Wang's son Qin Yuan is incomparable? Ye Fuxian glared at the rest of his life, this temperament, the restaurant can't stay. Let's go. Standing up, Ye Fuxian got up and left. Who is your master? This is a bit arrogant. A voice came from the restaurant. Ye Fuxian stood at the door of the restaurant, paused, and said, I also feel a little disdain compared to the group of criminals in the Qin dynasty. Chapter 319, Kiji. Another meaning. Qian Shenmu and Chu Yu were from Donghazong and Wanggu respectively. They appeared with Qin Yuan to make this marriage even more important. Qian Shanmu naturally didn't need to say much. Dong Hazong had announced that he and the Qin dynasty would join forces, but Chu Yan, he appeared as Qin Li's girlfriend. Or the Mochizuki girl. In the void, another figure came quickly, landed outside the palace, and landed. In the distance, a row of sword repairs came from the sky, and the sword screamed. As it approached the palace, the sword descended. Amidst the distant crowd, many people stepped out and headed towards the palace. These people were all from the top forces in the eastern wasteland, and they had already arrived. Today, the Qin dynasty proposed his relatives, and King Liu Guo also invited people from all parties to come as guests, and naturally the people of all forces would not miss it. This event is very likely to be a weather vane in the future situation in the east. Chapter 320, Proposing Marriage. Ye Fuxian naturally arrived, and a row of empty swords came to Ye Fuxian and others. It was Ye Wuchen and others. Come here. Ye Fuxian smiled at Ye Wuchen. Ye Wuchen nodded slightly, his expression slightly serious, and his gaze stared at the palace grounds in front of him. I don't know how this journey ends, otherwise what will he do? Up ahead, the strong people of the Qin dynasty stopped and looked at Ye Fuxian, seemingly waiting for them. Ye Fuxian and Ye Wuchen's eyes fell on one of the figures at the same time. Someone they had never seen before, a very beautiful man. This person must be Qin Yuan, Qin Wang's youngest son who had proposed his marriage. Qin Yuan is still very young, his age is almost the same as the little princess Qin Mengruo and the Qin King's son Qin Li. His eyes also looked at Ye Fuxian and Ye Wuchen, and then smiled at Ye Fuxian, and said, Qin Yuan. Zhu Wen heard the name Kotang Ye Fuxian. Really? Ye Fuxian smiled, but I don't know you. A few days ago, the two faced each other in a blank dialogue. Qin Yuan could meet each other with a smile, and as usual, the Qin dynasty style was as hypocritical as ever. The people who wanted to destroy the thatched huts in the eastern wasteland most likely belonged to the Qin dynasty. It's okay, I will find out later, I will have more opportunities to communicate in the future. King Yuan was still smiling. Not interested. Ye Fuxian raised his feet forward. King Yuan looked at Ye Fuxian's back and smiled indifferently. Is this the cottage style? King Li's eyes flashed, and Ye Fuxian wanted to stop the marriage proposal. How easy it was. Let's go. The guards stepped forward one by one, and the guards outside the palace gates automatically gave way, allowing them to enter the palace. People from all walks of life stepped into the majestic palace, and several people took the lead. They went up the golden stairs and climbed the stairs step by step. There was a paved path with a golden dragon pattern in front. People have been waiting in front of them, they all have great temperaments, they are all great figures of Liu Guo. Today, the Qin dynasty came to propose to relatives. Liu Wang's party invited all parties to come as guests, and the imperial minister Liu Guo naturally came to the scene. Up ahead, there is a slope. In the center of the slope is the figure of a golden dragon with teeth and claws, and on both sides are steps. The golden throne was placed on the slope, which was clearly where the king of Liu was sitting. Many people were waiting for the prince, with the exception of a few guards accompanying him. Most of them were the leaders of the main force's younger generation. Lots of people talking and laughing. To be able to see so many Donghang youths, today's Tianzhou is a happy thing, a big man said with a smile. Here, it should be called the future of the Eastern Wasteland. Everyone chatted casually. The direction where the eyes gathered the most was King Yuan's direction. This passerby is too extraordinary, whether it is King Yuan, King Li, King Mengruo, or Qian Shanmu, Chu Yan, all of them are the top figures of the younger generation. Of course, there were many people who looked at Ye Fuxian and others, guessing where the strength of these people came from. Just by looking at the appearance and disposition of the people, these big men basically concluded. Several eyes stared at Ye Fuxian, seemingly knowing who he was. The value is extraordinary, the temperament is extraordinary, there is also a burly youth around him, such a combination, perhaps only Ye Fuxian's cottage and the rest of his life. The one-handed sword repair beside him should be Ye Fuxian's friend Ye Wuchen, the seventh peak sword Fuyun Janzong, and the woman with silver eyes, of course, is a servant of the Lulan kingdom who is rumored to have been sent to the thatched hut not long ago. Lu Langyao didn't seem willing to give in to the slump, and wanted to chase the deer to the east, and bet fiercely on Ye Fuxian. At this point, King Yuan stepped forward and worshipped the ministers. He is polite and courteous. Many ministers responded with smiles, praising, Wind Prince Qin. If Prince Qin and my Princess Liu Guo were together, it would be a beautiful conversation. Someone said with a smile. At this moment, they were openly expressing their optimism, and everyone was talking as if they had not heard. Ye Fuxian and Ye Wuchen looked at the smiling people in front of them with cold gazes. It seems worthwhile to visit King Yuan in the past few days. No one knew what King Yuan was doing by visiting the king and minister Liu and talking, but they had to get along. Quite harmonious, and Ye Wuchen, obviously not good at these things, is also not as hypocritical as the Qin dynasty. At this time, King Li and others were not far from Ye Fuxian, and saw King Li looking at Ye Fuxian with a smile. It is said that Brother Ye has thoughts about my Qin dynasty's marriage proposal. Why is he using words to badmouth me? Qin dynasty. Is there slander? Ye Fuxian looked at King Lidao, and he called the Qin dynasty criminal. Is there slander? King Li naturally understood Ye Fuxian's meaning, but still smiled, and said, Kotang and my Qin dynasty are at odds. Brother Ye can naturally understand my Qin dynasty's opinion. I heard of the relationship between Brother Ye and Shenyu. Yes, now my uncle is coming to mention that he wants to be with Princess Shenyu. Didn't you Ye bless you? Since Shenyu and I are good friends, I will never see him fall into the fire pit. You can play this method yourself, but don't use it on others. Also, don't call me Ye, you and I are not used to it. Ye Fuxian said coldly, apparently referring to the wishful marriage between him and Chu Yan. Chu Yunmei glanced at Ye Fuxian, his expression as gentle and beautiful as before. King Li smiled and said, then wait and see. I believe His Majesty King Liu will not refuse such a good relationship. Ye Gongzi. At this time, a coquettish laugh came. Ye Fuxian turned his eyes, and saw the Dao demon witch Jiu Biu and Dao Zi Jiu Ji coming, as well as several powerful demons. A few days later, Ye Gongzi was surrounded by beautiful people. Jiu Biu smiled and glanced at Lu Langxiu. He had seen Lu Langxiu when he was in the wilderness. Do you want to be together? Ye Fuxian asked with a smile. I prefer, but my brother will not allow me to serve Ye Gongzi anymore. Jiu Biu smiled at Jiu Jiku behind her, and saw Jiu Jiku's eyes fall on Ye Fuxian. Ye Fuxian faced him. He glanced at her indifferently, then looked away. Ye Fuxian did not take the ancient autumn memorial to his heart, but now, the ancient autumn did nothing to him. In addition to Dao Mozong, the Ji family, Zuawang Palace, and Fuyung Janzong all came, except for the farthest northern Sword Mountain and Qiangqiu Temple. Another army came. Of course, there was only one person in Mazuki. The Zuawangdian people in Fuyung Janzong walked closer to the people from the Qin dynasty. At this time, on the steps of the slope, a majestic figure appeared there, followed by Liu Feiang and Liu Shenyu. Liu Shenyu looked at the crowd, and fell on Ye Fuxian and Ye Wuchen. Dark eyes seemed to have something in mind. See, Your Highness. Many ministers bowed. Qin Yuan and others took a step forward, stood together, and then bowed. Qin dynasty, Qin Yuan, Qin Li, Qin Mengruo, meet His Majesty King Liu. Donghazong Qianshan meets His Majesty King Liu at dusk. One by one bowed to look at him. Ye Fuxian also worshipped in the same way. He pays attention to details. When Chu Yu met King Liu, he claimed to be Chu Yu's little girl, not Chu Yu, this month's servant. You came from far away, you worked hard. Liu Wanghan said with a smile, looking at you. King Yuan took a step forward, saluted again with a smile, and raised his head. A handsome face looked at King Liu. Just as he was about to speak, he saw a figure walking straight in front of him, and said to King Liu, Your Majesty, Zongkifeng's Fuyun sword is not dusty. He has always admired Princess Liu Shenyu. He came to Liu Guo today with the courage to ask. Love and hope His Majesty will be complete. What King Yuan wanted to say couldn't help but swallow back, staring at Ye Wuchen who was a step ahead of him, even grabbing him in front of him. The scene calmed down instantly. Liu Shenyu's beautiful eyes stared at the one-armed white figure, standing proudly at the bottom of the stairs, with a straight shape and a firm tone. Her beautiful eyes were slightly red, with a hint of a smile, and she didn't hide it. Feelings, he came, and it was very direct, it was his responsibility. With the Qin dynasty grabbing people, East Wasteland, how many people dare to do it? What kind of pressure Ye Wuchen was under, he naturally understood. King Liu also looked at Ye Wuchen, and then glanced at Liu Shenyu next to him. At this moment, his heart was like a mirror. When Ye Wuchen hid the white, his sleeves were empty and seemed to be one-handed, but he retracted his eyes so that his eyes were very firm and unwavering. He was straight and arrogant like a sword. His arm was cut off by Li Doin, and now Li Doin has been killed by his sword. Wang Liu admired Ye Wuchen who was standing in front of him at this time. If he had done it before, he would have definitely considered marriage, but today Ye Wuchen's opponents were Qin Yuan and the Qin dynasty. Ye Wuchen, did you take things on purpose? King Li suddenly said, broke the silence, and said coldly, Qin dynasty announced a few days ago that he will come to Liu Guo today to propose marriage. What do you have at this time? What do you mean? Qin Yuan also bowed to King Liu. Your Majesty, Qin Yuan has admired Princess Shenyu for a long time. Today, he came to Liu Guo to raise his relatives, and is looking forward to Your Majesty's gift. Wrong. Ye Fuxian said coldly, how many times have you seen with Shenyu? Did you say a few words? Why did you admire him for a long time? Ye Wuchen and Shenyu already know each other, and they often live together in Choge City, not to mention that the Qin dynasty does not know that Ye Wuchen and Shenyu already have a relationship with each other. Now it is natural to come to propose relatives. Ye Fuxian said, I heard that the Prince of Qin and Qin are from people who know Jili. Since Jili, I have to know the beauty of a grown man, and win such beloved behavior. Prince Qin and Qin dynasty insulted. Ye Wuchen's few words were uncomfortable to say, of course he said it.